Happy Friday and welcome to AM Prime here on WESN Content's Capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. Thank you for joining me this morning as we start our day, the final working day for some, for most of this week. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you this morning to this edition of the program. And following yesterday's conversation with the president of the Trans-Tobago Unified Teachers Association, Mr. Martin Lumpkin, and issues that were raised within the education system, he addressed those issues. In fact, he added to some of the conversation that already exists in the public sphere with respect to progress being made with the Ministry of Education, as well as issues tutor themselves are trying to fix. I have received many calls from concerned parents across Trinidad and Tobago with respect to a number of schools that are facing difficulties with even having school this week. Some have had one class, which was the very first day. Some have had no school. There are issues with the infrastructure, there are issues with water. And fortunately, one parent has decided that they're willing to speak to us on AM Prime this morning to highlight the plights faced by parents, students and teachers of the Carrickfergus East Secondary School. We have that parent on the line with us this morning. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for joining me on the program this morning. If you can just specify the issues that the students, the teachers, the parents, they've been facing from the Carrickfergus East Secondary School.
One of the main issues that we are having at Carrickfergus East Secondary School is water and plumbing issues. Mm-hmm. And this has been going on since the first term, which was the last year, September. The children were home mostly like 2 to 3 times for the week. Mm-hmm. And every time the tank is full, it just leaking out. So then it don't have proper plumbing facilities to upkeep the water for the students and the staff to be at the school.
Now, this has been happening since the beginning of the school year, the academic year. This is now the final term for such a year. Has there been, obviously, there would have been conversation between the PTA and the principal. What has the principal indicated over the last few months?
Well, from what we heard is that the principal keeps trying to get in contact with the Ministry of Education. She did get through, and we haven't had any further updates yet about the problem. But from what we understand is that the ministry came during the week here, and they kind of sorted out the problem a bit during the vacation. But all have not been rectified, and up to yesterday morning, it had no water.
Mm-hmm. And how is, what about the Member of Parliament for the area? What have they said, or have they even been contacted in relation to the issues?
I am not sure if anyone from the PTA or the school contacted him about the situation, but it's getting overbearing because myself and other parents have children that write in C6 within a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And plus I have another child going there as well, and it's getting overbearing that every time we drop our children to school, we get a call within an hour, 2 hours time to come for our children. What about the parents who work far?
Mm-hmm. So classes obviously have been impacted upon to a great extent. On average, how many full days of school do students actually have a week?
Well, this week was really, really tough. I can't say exactly how much time, but school haven't been official this week because they go and a number of students haven't turned out. Teachers left yesterday because the water problem is getting overbearing.
Mm-hmm. Is the only issues affecting the school the plumbing system and the supply of water, or are there other issues?
They have a lot of other issues in the school because it have some home classes haven't had a math teacher since whenever, right? But the school is very deplorable, very, very deplorable. It is not a safe place for the staff and the students.
But parents are still sending students to school. I suppose parents don't have a choice, but they're still receiving those calls.
We don't have a choice because if we don't, on their report card they're saying that they are absent for a certain amount of time. But how could we feel comfortable as parents sending our children to school in that kind of condition?
And the teachers, though, the teachers, when there is actual school, are the teachers there to attend classes? I know you just mentioned that even some forms haven't had a maths teacher, which is a very basic subject.
Some teachers will be there. It has some teaching will take place. But other than that, put yourself in a teacher position. You go to a class and the class in a mess. No proper window, no proper facility to teach. You will not feel comfortable to teach students in that kind of condition. And all we asking for is for the government, not really the government, but the ministry, to try and help our children's future.
Well,
because it has parents not able to afford extra lessons.
No, I understand that, but with respect to exams coming up, I know you mentioned that you have one child who is writing CSEC very soon. You have another child within the school setting. Do parents actually, I don't know if this has been discussed amongst parents or if it's just an individual parent thing, but what about actually allowing their child to sit the exams if they haven't had a steady classes, if they haven't been able to cover the entire curriculum?
Well, that is really confusing, and it is a very good question as well. But I am one of the fortunate parents that is able to get extra lessons for my son. But I cannot say for the other parents.
Well, I mean, any planned action in terms of, I know that you all have said the principal has been continuously trying with the ministry. You're not entirely sure if anyone has reached out to the MP. What is being discussed among the parents with regards to the next step to try and get these issues resolved? Because, I mean, I'm appreciative of you coming on the conversation, and I will try my best on my end to try and reach out to the Member of Parliament and even the Minister of Education. But any further plans by the parents as to try and resolve such issues?
Our next step should be going in front of the school. We're not going to cause any drama or bacchanal, but we just want to be heard. We just want to be heard, and we just need the help for our children's future. Because the school is very, very horrible to accommodate children at a learning advantage right now.
So even the infrastructure is hazardous, you would describe it as?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We weren't able to get any pictures or anything like that. But being in the school, knowing the school, it is not what it used to be.
Well, if it is possible, only if it is possible, you can forward some photos to us, and we will again put it on air to further bring awareness to this issue. But I want to thank you very much for joining me on the program this morning, and thank you for your voices are heard on this end, and hopefully we can open up more platforms and avenues for this to be resolved very soon.
The parents of the students of Carolina East Secondary will really, really, really be thankful for that help, because it is getting overbearing and it is frustrating and stressful for the parents, the principal, and her staff.
I can imagine. Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a great day. I'm so sorry to hear about all these issues.
Thank you.
Keep well. Folks, I mean, this is just one school. I've heard many other schools. I keep hearing, for example, one school, the Aging Infrastructure, the Care Presbyterian Primary School, where in that particular instance, a new school was actually built. The infrastructure and the facilities have been completed. But the Ministry of Education, from what I understand, I cannot say that this is the entire truth, but from what I've been told, they haven't actually paid the contractor, and therefore the contractor hasn't handed over the keys. So what's been taking place there is that there's a lot of grass, there's a lot of weed that is overgrown, it's actually taking over the building, whilst the existing infrastructure, the old infrastructure, is still being occupied. Now you'd think that because they built a school in the first place, that the existing infrastructure was marked for destruction, but this is where we're at as a nation. That is just one example. You're hearing this example from the Carapachama East Secondary School with regards to the water supply and plumbing facilities. We didn't get into the specifics as it relates to the infrastructure, but I will not deny, given the stories that we've heard over the last few months, that the infrastructure there is very much hazardous. If you take a drive and you look at, and many of you will have, sons, daughters, grandchildren who attend these schools. If you ever take a drive across Transbago and you take a look at some of these government secondary schools, it is absolutely appalling how they're being maintained. In fact, even describing them as being maintained in itself is a statement that's not applicable here. They're simply not being maintained. So at the end of the day, when I keep hearing that the minister and the Ministry of Education, they're expressing concern, when it is they're worried, when it is we're focusing on the education system, when we're trying to help resolve bigger issues by focusing on the smaller factors. I say smaller factors, it's actually a very big factor, which is the education system. We're not able to actually sort out, up until this point, the curriculum. We're not able to sort out at this point actually trying to evaluate each student and teach on a needs-by-needs basis, because even though there is a cost associated with that, there is the belief that that could actually be facilitated. We're not sorting out the existing infrastructure. We're not being able to maintain this infrastructure. And if you take a look at one company that actually was responsible for handling such issues, which was the Education Facilities Company Limited. Now there's still a company that's on the books, right? But from what I understand, there's no staff. The company more or less is just shut. It's acting like a shell company, because there was a board, and still in place, a board trying to run the company, but it was marked for closure and marked to file for bankruptcy. And if I'm not mistaken, some employees were taking the Minister of Finance to court over that decision, and up until this point I have not heard anything beyond that. So in the interim, MTS Maintenance and Security, the company that is now responsible for actually maintaining school facilities and providing security across the nation for schools, well, they've been faced with such a task, to the extent that they're owed millions, if I'm not mistaken, hundreds of millions of dollars by the Ministry of Education. It's the same thing that happened with EFCL, where they were owed so much money, it wasn't being paid, they have to file for bankruptcy, they're shut down. Employees weren't being paid for months at a time, and now that's out of the books. Now we're hearing the same thing is happening with MTS following their takeover of their responsibilities. We can't get it right. I don't understand at all how we can't get it right. It seems as though it's so simple. But you have to wonder at the end of the day, even though they keep saying that the economy is getting better, they can see the growth, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and here say we've come out of the COVID-19 pandemic facing with resilience. If I'm not mistaken, that is what the Minister of Finance a couple of years ago referred to his budget as: resilience coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the face of a pandemic, resilience is what? We haven't been able to pay our bills. You know, and I'm not talking about from a personal level. I'm speaking about just generally with parents and school facilities and maintenance of these facilities. We haven't been able to cover that. So guess what? I can make the argument that the education system has collapsed. I can make the argument that we don't care about the education system and we're not doing anything. You have to wonder really what the Minister of Education does, what the ministry does. Because quite frankly, as Mr. Martin Lumpkin said yesterday, if it is that you only plan for public relations purposes of ensuring that all schools open on the very first day and all teachers attend on the very first day and all students are there on the very first day, but from the second day of the term, you're having issues where you can't have classes because of sewage problems, because of plumbing problems, because of infrastructural issues, for whatever the cause may be, we're not doing anything about it. So this entire thing about having to fix education to help with crime and whatnot, we're enabling it. We're enabling it. We're facilitating it. In this country, this sweet, sweet country, oh, the irony of that statement, we have fallen. We have fallen. And we have fallen flat. And up until this point, ladies and gentlemen, you're still going to hear a political campaign anytime any of these ministers come on. Ladies and gentlemen, forgive my rant, but at the same time, it was absolutely necessary. Thank you very much once more to that parent. We'll try to do our very best on this end. And as I said, send us your photos. If you have any information, any photos to share with us here on AM Prime, you can reach out to us at amprimewesn@gmail.com. That's amprimewesn@gmail.com. Send us your information, send us the school, send us some photos, and we will bring this to light. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on the program. When we return, we'll continue this morning's conversations.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. a father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blushy Shares. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny's Sport, Extra Foods, Mart's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, and WESN, 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook.
Well, after 3 years of having a virtual festival, the Bocas Lit Fest returns this year for What's Your Story? That's the theme of Bocas Lit Fest 2023. And for the first time after the COVID-19 pandemic, we're all full festival back in person. So that is certainly something to look forward to. It runs from April 28th to the 30th. And I'm joined this morning to expand on what is expected from this year's events. Mr. Jacques-Claude Connor, he's the Chief Executive Officer of the Bocas Lit Fest. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, and good morning, everyone in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, sir. What's Your Story is the theme of this year's festival. It's a very, very intriguing theme. Simple, but it really opens your minds to many things. Why go with this theme? What was the decision or the thinking behind this particular theme?
Well, more increasingly over the years, we want to center the festival on you, on the person attending, and around the idea that everybody has a story. It's not just about writers and the people who could write in fancy ways, or this elite group of people, but what is your story, and how does this festival help you to understand yourself, your own story, to tell your story in a better way. So I think this year, this is one of our best themes, What's Your Story? And this is one of the themes that allow us to really bring home that idea that the festival belongs to everybody and that everybody has a story.
But also as a young writer and perhaps somebody who's new to writing, it also seems as an opportunity for me to not only probably further my passions, but discover a lot more in terms of the literary arts. Is there focus for new writers coming from this festival?
A focus on new writers?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes.
Yeah. So Bocas is the festival is really an incubator in a big way for new and emerging talents. So as a new writer attending the festival, you get a lot. You get to meet established writers, people who have succeeded as writers. Now that might sound like, okay, that is not very valuable. But then ask yourself, where in Trinidad, you're going to just bounce up writers, in such so many of them from all over the world, So you get to meet successful writers. You get to meet people, talk with them, hang out with them, ask them about their journeys. Then we have workshops. We have a number of workshops that you could attend that will help you craft, and hone your technique as a writer. Every single day we have a workshop. We have many different workshops. One that I'm particularly excited about is the learning to write a memoir. What makes a great memoir? All of us want to eventually write some story about our lives. Even if we want to pass on a story to our children or grandchildren, we need to learn to write a great memoir to tell our story, right? So that aspect of workshops is another aspect of it. Then there are publishers, there are agents publishing. We have a new writers showcase where where people can actually read excerpts from their manuscripts, their books, so to say, and share the talent publicly and get public feedback on that work. They can meet publishers. They can to find out about how publishers go about the process of selecting books, what makes a great manuscript to them, publishers also with a Caribbean focus, and there are just so many other ways. There's just this energy. The booksellers, so the whole industry of writing is represented in those 3 days at the National Library, and is a really, really, really rich space for a new writer. And in fact, a number of people who have attended in the past have gone on to have had their careers accelerated because of the opportunities at Bocas Lit Fest.
Well, in that sense, what about returning to full in-person sessions following virtual sessions over the last 3 years? Considering all that is planned and all that is put forward, how much of a relief is it to return in person?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, you can only do so much virtually, and I think with our festival in particular, it's about a vibe. It's about a space, a coming together of people. And the energy in the room is really a big part of it. So,
Mr. Kuna, are you with us?
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
So having it physically, we are already feeling a larger buzz. There's a lot more just excitement, going towards the festival. And I'm speaking from the planning side of things, us coming together as a team, putting it together, hearing the feedback, seeing what people look forward to. We've planned virtual festivals for the last 3 years, and now we have this experience and this opportunity to compare that to the experience of now doing a physical festival again. And certainly the planning the physical festival feels a lot more fun, and just there's greater sense of anticipation. So I think that will translate to the festival itself. All you just have to do is just come to Nallis, and just hang around, talk to people, sit in some of the rooms. There will, as I mentioned, there are workshops, there are films, there are open mics. There's something happening every moment, and it's just easy to submerge yourself into the vibe of the festival, whereas online, you actually have to, join the Zoom, sit down. You might be cooking in the background while a session going on, but just being there in person at the festival, I think would be enough to already start to get a taste and get to experience and get to learn about literature.
Mr. Kuna, do you think there's still that warm reception towards the literary arts? And I mean that in the sense that, as you know, focusing on children, and I can say that that's absolutely grand. I think that's brilliant, and more of that needs to be done. But is the focus on children because with modern age, modern technology, be it television, social media, there's been that shift away from the literary arts and from reading. Is that one of the focuses of the Bocas Lit Fest?
Yeah, so Bocas Lit Fest has 2 primary audiences. We have the writers, and we do a lot to help develop writers at all stages of their career, from the new writer to the senior writer, to writers who are now moving into the international scene, right? And we have examples, awards, programs and opportunities tailored to each stage of writing. We also have to develop readers and develop a reading public in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, a reading public also has to be defined, right? Because reading the papers, reading blog posts on social media, that is all part of what it means to be a modern human, and to read, But we also think that literature, in the sense of fiction, right, classics. You have your Derek Walcott, you have Miguel Street, you have the things you would have learned in school. These things are critical to understanding our context in the Caribbean. To understand, there was writing inspired by historical movements, and that captures the Caribbean identity and is really wrestling around shaping that, right? And that writing has value for how people think of themselves, how we form ourselves as a society, and so forth. And just reading as a whole, it prevents misinformation. It reduces it, because readers are able to critically analyze. They're able to look at multiple perspectives. If you think about reading, it's really about listening. So it's like listening to a very long speech. Somebody's speaking for 6 hours, sharing a story, and you are imagining and you experiencing it privately, but you're not interrupting them or anything like that. So there's this skill that is embedded within reading, which I think involves a level of humility, a level of listening and so forth. And children, I think, stand to benefit from that. There's a lot of research that talk about the benefits of reading to children, reading from the womb, right? And before children could comprehend, to hear words to develop their, as the brain is developing, to connect the dots with language, to be introduced to more complex words, more complex ways of expressing oneself. You're limited by a language. Your expression of humanity, of your humanity, expression of yourself is limited by the language, and you have to do that. So reading expands our ability to express ourselves. And I think, young people, children from, as I say, womb, teenage, young adult and UE, this is a real critical time of development. If we really want to sustain a strong literary heritage in Trinidad and Tobago, then we need to work on not just developing readers at a young level, but also writers, at a young level, but developing readers also, people who have a passion for reading, people who see value in it, and people who enjoy it. Because fundamentally, people think that reading is boring for a lot of people, that it is not something that is for fun, but to get lost in a world, in a book, and really, be fully engrossed in it and so forth, is something everybody should experience. I'm not sure if, growing up, what that book might have been for you, but I remember reading Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and the common books like this. But when and the days when I would be reading those books, your brain just locked in. You can be sitting down, just like you'll see young people sitting on a computer for 5-6 hours straight. 5-6 hours straight on a book. And the difference is that has a developmental impact right back into academics, right back into your communication skills and so forth, So, it's really a world and an opportunity to get engrossed. And then the other thing, and not to go on too long, right? But, a lot of the content on Netflix, right? A lot of the content, Marvel and so forth, Infinity War and all that, they first started as books, as literary points of imagination. It did not just emerge straight to a movie screen. There was this process of somebody refining their ideas and putting together, these characters and so forth. And it actually, with the comic book readers who helped make that movement of possible today in film.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Conrad, let me ask you, because you've said a lot, but you've stated a lot of valuable information, and I hope everybody digested that, because two things in particular that stood out to me. Reading holds value, and it allows us the ability to expand on expressing ourselves. But you also focused from a Caribbean-centric perspective, which I think is excellent. Culturally, the Bocas Lit Fest, I believe this year, they're having an all-mass competition. So storytelling from a cultural perspective, can you speak to us about that particular highlight of the festival?
All right, highlights. Okay, all right, so before the festival, you know, and you run up to the festival, we have a storytelling caravan. We have, you know, we've done a number of sessions that involve carrying storytellers to different parts of Trinidad, Tobago, Matura, Toco, Tobago, you know, Cuba, and so forth, right? And we have storytellers working with children to tell a story as well as facilitate the children creating their own story. So the children will come together, sit down, and work with the storyteller and actually script a story, right? And the story is then put together, illustrated, and published, and children get to see their names on the back of a book. So that is actually happening, you know, every weekend as we lead up to the festival. So that is something that you can find out more about. You can go to www.bocaslitfest.com or our Facebook page and see where the caravan heads to next, right? But at the festival itself, every day we have, so we will have a main workshop. So we have, and for anybody who's wanting to learn, the first day on Friday, we have a workshop on the preservation for beginners, right? The second day, we have a workshop on, well, what makes a great memoir. Actually, that's on the same day. And then on the third day, we have intimacy and poetry. Sorry, on the Saturday, intimacy and poetry. So about writing poetry for loved ones and so forth, right? And other workshops like that. Then we have a number of film screenings, right? So we have a film that we actually did 2 to 3 years ago called Port of Spain Writers Haven. So you'll be screening that film. And then we have a number of other films that based on a Caribbean context, Caribbean Eye, Visionaries, Crossing Over, that looks at Lancelot Lane and other Caribbean literary character figures, right? We have an extempo debate on the first day as well between Black Sage and Dion Diaz. So, you know, you see an extempo and our literary traditions coming out there. We have the big ideas, so that is a panel type of discussion. Is more like the traditional festival, and people get, you know, when people think of a festival, they think of panels and that type of thing. But we have a few panels. One of the main ones is is a central discussion that we have in every festival. This one is called the Big Ideas.
I'm also seeing tributes to Gordon Rolle and Samuel Selvon.
Yes, so actually we would be launching an essay writing competition centered around the work of Samuel Selvon for students. And again, that's something open to the public. There will be a prize connected to that, and it will be tailored to secondary school students.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Kona, I want to thank you very much for joining me. As we wrap up this discussion, could you just once more tell us where we can get more information on the Bocas Lit Fest and the Poetry Slam?
Yeah, so www.bocaslitfest.com. So just Google Bocas Lit Fest and you'll go to the website. The first thing on the website really is a breakdown of the program. You can click Friday. You can see what's happening from morning to night, Saturday and Sunday, right? And some of the highlights, we have the finals of the National Poetry Slam. That's on a Sunday, and on a Friday we have this big line in a place called the Big Black Box, where we have actually some of the best poets from around the world who have Caribbean heritage performing along with music and so forth in Port of Spain. So there's something from the morning straight to the night. There's something for children. If you have kids and you want to bring them, there's a children's program and there's an adult program.
Well, Mr. Jacques-Claude Kona, thank you very much for joining me this morning. This sounds very much exciting. I look forward to it, especially these tributes and the opportunity for new young writers to develop their skills, their passions, and hopefully lead to careers in the future. So thank you very much for the work that is being done, and best of luck for the festival next weekend.
So thank you so much, and I hope to see you.
You most likely will.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you, sir.
As I've always stressed, any opportunity for young individuals, young minds, young talents here in Trinidad and Tobago, we will always support. This is excellent. Thank you very much. A lot was said, and as I said, I hope everybody digested it, but the focus on writing, the focus on reading, how reading even has evolved, and how reading and books have actually led to other major ventures, even Netflix. But I think we're going to do things a bit different this morning, given the time that we have. Instead of going for the break, I think we should go straight into the regional updates and then break for news on the hour. So let's start this morning's regional updates with the island of Barbados. So we start with Barbados this morning. Vice President of the IFAD, the International Funding for Agricultural Development, Joyster Puri, was on a 3-day visit to assess projects being funded by international organization. One of her visits landed at the Nego Bank. So let's take a look at this.
Melons, cucumbers, peppers. Thousands of pounds yielded from these farms here in Nego Bank, supplying restaurants, hotels, and tables all over Belize. Nego Bank is one of the farming communities that make up the vegetable basket of the Belize district and a beneficiary of IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, through the Resilient Rural Belize project. Because as bountiful as the crop might be today, there are many threats to sustainability, and resilience is the goal, as explained by IFAD's Vice President Jayotsna Puri on her visit to Nego Bank on Friday.
You know, as we were driving here, I was thinking about how difficult it has been for us to get here. It's taken us almost an hour and a half. And I appreciate that this is, as Dr. Flowers said, is the vegetable basket of Belize. And yet access to this area is so difficult and something that you have all been dealing with for a very long time. Overall, globally, we know that we produce enough food. What gets lost and why are we still seeing high levels of hunger and malnutrition? And it is primarily because of lack of access. Access to markets and access to production, which essentially means that we go hungry today, right? That we suffer from malnourishment, that we don't have nutritious diets. And this is exactly what IFAD is really committed to ensuring, that it is mitigating not just now, but in the long run. So while COVID and climate disasters and shocks like Lisa will occur, unfortunately, over and over again, we are going to see typhoons, we are going to see health disasters. I think one of the key learnings that we've had from the previous few years is that, one, access is really key. Second, we can't keep depending on humanitarian assistance, because humanitarian assistance, by definition, is emergency assistance. But we know that these events are going to occur over and over again. So we've got to build for the medium term.
But how do we know if we are achieving the goals and outcomes for sustainability?
And so we compare the areas that we've not invested in and with those areas that we have invested in. Because that's one way, and I'm obviously giving you a very simple methodological perspective, but it's far more complicated. But it's one way of essentially saying as to where IFAD and IFAD's partner investments are making a difference and how much. Mm-hmm. So IFAD is actually one of the few international financing institutions, or IFIs, that truly measures its overall impact in a way that can be attributed to IFAD. So it can ask and answer the question, what would have happened if IFAD had not come in? Mm-hmm. And we're able to say how much as well. So for example, in the most recent evaluation or impact assessments, we found that we were increasing the resilience of populations that we were serving by 13%.
The commencement of the project, valued at around $3.7 million, Nego Bank has seen the development of a road and irrigation systems. But what about the other challenges?
Some other challenges that I've just been able to identify in the 10 minutes that I've been here would include, a lack of certain utilities, electricity, potable water, and even, for example, the accessibility to fuel. Are these challenges that IFAD helps to address?
Absolutely. So these are all what are called merit services: health, education, utilities, electricity, etc. But guess what? All of the things that we are talking about here are predicated on roads, on access. Because unless you have roads and accessible roads and all-weather roads and high-quality roads, you're not going to be able to reach markets, to be able to reach health centers, to be able to reach schools, to be able to even extend the electricity grid. And so that's why we think that a fundamental investment for us is rural roads and also small-scale irrigation, both of which are parts of Resilient Belize. And we are focusing on ensuring that this infrastructure is built, because everything else is then predicated on building this access.
Tamar Jones, Love News.
Accessibility is an issue, of course. There is the identification of food security, and most importantly, what has been raised in the conversations is nutrition security as well. So we're seeing a large number of individuals across the world who go hungry, who suffer from malnutrition, and though food is being produced, a lot of food is thrown away. And that's the thing, because of so many regulations in place, but lack of access to markets, food is wasted, food is thrown away. And people who are hungry and perhaps cannot afford to get a meal, well, such food many a times, even across the world, there are NGOs that are putting things in place where they're actually trying to get food that is due to be thrown away. Perfectly good, but because of regulations in place, it has to be disposed of. NGOs are not actually taking that and utilizing it in soup kitchens across the world. So these are the things that are being spoken about. And with food security, nutrition security, that topic on the rise, given global events, whether it be war, global warming, well, that is just one update for you. We move across now to the island of Grenada, where the government is working towards clearing Grenada's records from long-standing debts, improving revenue collections, and seeking new ways to access financing. Well, there is focus on Trinidad and Tobago next. Let's take a look at this report.
Grenada is working towards clearing up its outstanding debts owed to different countries in a bid to improve the country's creditworthiness. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell confirmed that government successfully negotiated a settlement of $5 million in long-standing debt arrears owed to the state of Libya, contracted in 1980s by the People's Revolutionary Government, the PRG. This was a major move made 4 months after winning the June 23, 2022 general elections. The Prime Minister says Trinidad and Tobago's debt is now next.
Main creditor that we need to address is the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, our sister CARICOM neighbor to the south, arising from monies that were advanced to Grenada in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan and thereafter. And we are working on addressing that.
Grenada presently owes Trinidad and Tobago $31.5 million. Loan number 1 for $16.5 million was contracted in September of 2005. Loan 2 of $15 million was contracted in June 2013. The Grenadian leader says long-standing unresolved debts arrears to countries such as Algeria and Trinidad and Tobago have adversely affected Grenada's credit rating, placing the country in the category of selected default, or SD. To keep the financial wheels turning smoothly, the Prime Minister says, while debts are being cleared, the time-old method of raising revenue via taxes will be strengthened.
From 2024, we intend to embark upon a new tax system driven largely from a digital basis. The advantages of doing so is that, one, it actually reduces the cost of tax collection to the government.
Additional financing measures being looked at are carbon trading and climate change leverage for more concessionary financing. PM Mitchell said his administration is looking at having Grenada accredited to benefit from a number of climate change-related funding.
The Cabinet, for instance, on Monday, approved Grenada joining the partnership agreement between the OECS CARICOM and the Afrexim Bank. We are also looking at exploring the possibility of becoming a member of the Caribbean and Latin American Development Bank, which is in short known as CAF. The team at the Ministry of Finance is currently reviewing that situation with the hope that we can get a cabinet approval in the not too distant future to also be able to partner with that institution.
The PM's announcements were made during a recent post-cabinet briefing. Sherian Blackburn-Stephen, GBN News.
Well, last week we heard that Grenada was actually seeking financing from other traditional means of financing, such as the IMF and World Bank. They were looking at Africa as an opportunity for being able to finance loans, being able to borrow money, and even for investment. And now Grenada is focusing on repaying its debts, with Trinidad and Tobago on the books for negotiations next in order to clear long-standing debts. That's it for your regional update on AM Prime. We're going to take a break now for news on the hour, and when we return, we'll get into the final topic this morning as we wrap things up for this week here on the program. Stay tuned to AM Prime.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. LAT speaks out on regional heads' alleged ridicule of judges. Tobago Chamber head calls for less heavy-handed approach by licensed officers. Regionally, Barbados to get earlier storm warnings with new system. And internationally, Elon Musk's rocket explodes on maiden flight. Now for the details. The Law Association deprecates the recent attempts by regional political leaders to ridicule judges for their decisions to grant bail to persons charged with murder and, worse yet, suggest they tend to favor the clients of certain unidentified lawyers. In a statement, the Law Association says that it is the responsibility for all to work towards mechanisms to deal with the surging criminal activity in the region, and it is expected that judges and magistrates will be sensitive to what is happening in the wider society. But it is counterproductive to wantonly castigate those sworn to protect and uphold hard-won and cherished rights in the pursuit of these solutions. The Law Association says it is even more irresponsible for the regional leaders to sow public discord about the decisions entrusted to judges and magistrates. Tobago Business Chamber Chairman Martin George is calling on the Transport Commissioner to review the manner in which road traffic exercises are conducted in Tobago. This comes after Chief Secretary Fali Augustine expressed sentiments about officers' intention to break records in sharing tickets. Augustine confirmed as well that his wife was in fact stopped by a licensed officer recently.
From what we are told, there are only 2 licensed facilities for vehicle inspections. Persons have been waiting for hours, lining up, trying to get inspections. There are not enough inspection stations. So then to come out with this oppressive conduct and, to be punishing drivers in this way does not appear to be the best approach. We think that the licensing division can do better.
George says the heavy-handed approach must end.
And not just coming out with this heavy-handed, using a sledgehammer to kill an ant, type of approach. We think that there is more that can be done in terms of trying to meet the people of Tobago halfway, the drivers, to ensure that, look, there is greater understanding, knowledge, and compliance so that we can all work together to ensure that our roads are safe, our vehicles are safe, and that drivers do comply with the law.
Barbados may soon be able to receive earlier and more accurate warnings on approaching storms. 1 month away from the start of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season, Prime Minister Mia Mottley revealed that the island will have advanced use of the Hurricane Hunter plane, which collects data to determine the system's strength and predict landfall probabilities. In international developments now, Elon Musk's SpaceX company's mammoth new rocket Starship has exploded on its maiden flight. No one was hurt in the uncrewed test that lifted off from Texas's east coast on Thursday morning local time. After around 3 minutes into the flight, the rocket, the biggest ever developed, started to tumble out of control and was destroyed, most probably by onboard charges. Mr. Musk has said his company will try another launch in a couple of months. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds, Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny Sport, Extra Foods, Matt's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, and WESN, 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook.
Welcome back to the program, and thank you for staying with me this morning. And we get into the final conversation this morning with respect to comments that were made by St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, saying, there's been this entire conversation raised once more about in some instances, women being part of the cause for young men committing crimes. To have this conversation and expand on what was suggested, I'm joined by Dr. Gabrielle Hossain. She's a senior lecturer at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. Good morning, Dr. Hossain.
Good morning to you and your viewers.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. Dr. Hossain, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said attractive women are actually part of violent crimes perpetrated by men, suggesting that men associate with young women, in some cases, who are high maintenance and have to rob and steal and kill and deal drugs in order to maintain these young, beautiful, high-maintenance women. There has been public reaction already, mixed reaction, need I say. What are your thoughts on these comments by the Prime Minister?
First of all, as I commented in the Newsday, I believe yesterday, I really think that we should not give sexist comments even more media room than they've been given. So let me instead deal with some of the things that we should be thinking about, which is that, first of all, we know that the issues of crime and violence are linked to such things as not only poverty and not only poor educational outcomes, poor literacy, family violence, family trauma, but also we know they're linked to our beliefs and values around manhood. So we know that having a gun, being in a gang, committing crimes, being able to live off the illegal economy, and being able to get respect and status because people fear you are all standard aspects of masculinity in our society and globally. We see it in music, we see it in movies. And so the conversation we need to have about men really is one about asking what are the beliefs and values about manhood that lead men to crime and violence? That's the first thing. And secondly, what are the kinds of relationships that they are in that lead them towards crime and violence? And I would argue, based on scholarship that exists in the Caribbean, that the relationships that lead them to crime and violence are less the ones that are in their families, whether it's their partners, their children, their parents, but the ones that they have with other men around them. We know, for example, that teenage boys may be killed when they refuse to join a gang in a community. We know that when men go to prison, because there's no programs for men on remand, and men can be on remand for long periods of time, that one of the ways that men also survive in prison is by being protected by a gang who they then have to become loyal to when they leave prison. And so in the scholarship, we first want to look at men's relations with other men, not just fathers or brothers or uncles, but the men widely around them, and then the images of masculinity that become available to men as having high status and power and authority, which poor men can access, and to help us understand how poor men try to access those kinds of ideals. And we should start there before we blame women for what men do.
Dr. Hossain, I agree with you. There needs to be a conversation about masculinity and manhood. And as much as we are speaking about that, we should acknowledge that in instances, young men actually perhaps look up to gang leaders and even aspire to be gang leaders, if that is the case, because of the power and the manhood associated with it. So if we are to have that conversation and to accept that, is there also an acceptance or perhaps an understanding that there is a possibility that women actually subscribe to such behavior or such aspirations?
Sure. I mean, these are ideals in our society, and all of us, regardless of whether or not we're women or men, are socialized by sexist, racist, classist, homophobic beliefs and values, and women don't necessarily grow up in this society and somehow emerge with a oppositional or alternate consciousness just because they're women. We are all socialized by these social norms. So of course women and men will share many of these ideals. Women sometimes can be critical of social norms because they're aware of how they are subordinated or excluded or oppressed or, violated by them. But yes, and so where these ideas of manhood are the ones that carry higher status, power, and authority, women and girls may also aspire to those kinds of behaviors because those are the ones that get respect. Those are the ones that get you money. Those are the ones that give you a sense of leadership in a community. And so masculine ways of behaving, which can be toxic, can in fact be adopted by both women and men. And that's why our goals aren't to, not to blame men or blame women. That's why our goals are always to transform our beliefs and values, but also to transform the options that are available to men, in this case because they're the predominant perpetrators of crime and violence, but also transform the options that are available to women so that they too can continue to be the ones in society that create values or that reproduce relations and values of caring and nurturing, whether for families or communities.
I want to get to that point in a moment, but is it that, arguably, the majority of the reports that we see on a daily basis of crimes being committed are by men. But is that an issue with respect to reporting crimes that are committed by women? And there's even been an argument about physical and sexual abuse that women commit against men that is not reported for many reasons. Do you think that it is that reporting as well that to a certain extent has sheltered or shadowed the crimes that are committed by women?
Well, I think there's pretty good data collection on who commits specific kinds of crimes like robberies, assaults, murders, because so I don't think that there is I don't think that there is an underrepresentation in the data of women actually committing crimes when they do. I think in relation to interpersonal violence, domestic violence, and relationship violence, I think it is underreported by both men and women. And I think both men and women do not get the services and the treatment that they would like to get when they go to report, whether in police stations or as they try to go through the court system. So an argument is popularly made that men are, embarrassed when they go to the police station, and men are not given the respect and the treatment that they should be, and all of that, and their needs are not met. But that argument has been made about women for decades, and also continues to be made about the way that women's needs are met when they are victims of domestic violence of various kinds. So I think that there's underreporting by both women and men. I think that the data shows that while women may also be aggressive, violent, or conflictual in relationships, and I'm sure that there are men who are violent out there, and I'm sure that there are men who are victims out there. And of course, we want no men or women to be victims of any kind of violence. I think that the data also shows us that men kill women, right, commit femicide at a rate that women simply do not. And that is an absolute line in the sand that we must draw in society when we try to say that women are more violent than men. The data just does not show up in terms of femicide in justifying that position. That said, our position as a society is that women should not be violent to men, just as men should not be violent to women, and to call for, our social systems to find ways, and I think there are small efforts all over, and of course the work of shelters, 800 SAVE, the call line that you can call to report domestic violence, family services, and so on. I think there are small efforts, but we know that the rates of family violence, domestic violence, violence against women, in some cases violence against men, we know that what's happening in the family with the rates of violence that exist, including against children, if you look at the child abuse rate, that a lot of what is happening in our society is stemming from what's happening in the family. And so that's really where a lot of our focus needs to be. If we can create families where the abuse is reduced, we can therefore reduce the crime as it spirals as a ripple effect. That said, and I think this is an important point to make, the population needs to know that there have been decades of proposals for reducing crime. For example, prison reform is a major one, and so we're not looking for things that have not been said. We are not looking for solutions that have not been proposed. We are looking for those that make decisions to show that they are aware of what has been proposed over decades, that they are aware of what it is they can implement in the short, medium, and long term, and the challenges, and that they are finding ways to use those proposals to actually implement for us to see them change.
Well, these particular programs that are perhaps already in place, or the ones that are hoped to be implemented, implementation is a buzzword, are they really going to reach? I mean, the ones that exist, do they reach the young men that are really in need of them? I mean, how could we give some level of assurance that, okay, we're creating a program, we're implementing it, but we can guarantee it's going to reach those who need it?
Absolutely. The data from around the region, whether we look at countries like Belize and what they have done with prison rehabilitation for young men, if we look in Trinidad and Tobago with Wishing for Wings, Debbie Jacobs' work with young men who are institutionalized, who then she went on to mentor their writing, creative writing. If we look at what ALTA does in terms of identifying that the men who commit crimes are primarily men who have not finished school and have literacy challenges, Absolutely, the data exists out there, and when you speak to those that are working in the field, we have a lot of people that know what they're doing in Trinidad and Tobago, and who are fighting to have what they're doing be scaled up, and who are often hitting a wall when they need for their efforts to be scaled up on a national level or through state services. I'll give you one other example that I think we do know exists, and all of the data globally says exists, and that is the Health and Family Life Education Program in schools. And if we want to reduce crime and violence, I really want the population to be able to make a call to the government, to the state, to say that we need to teach about GBV in schools, gender-based violence. Teach GBV prevention in schools should be a motto, should be a call, should be a slogan in the lips of everyone in the country. Teach GBV prevention in schools. And the way to do that is through the Health and Family Life Education Program, which reaches the widest number of students, including those who may not have families that can provide the support and education for them, or families where they are experiencing violence, or families.
Dr. Hossain?
Of violence. So the HFLE curriculum is absolutely essential, and right now,
Dr. Hossain, are you still with us? All right, okay, I think we've lost Dr. Hossain there. I think, yes, it seems as though we have lost Dr. Hossain. We're going to try and get her back on air very quickly to wrap up that discussion. She was making a final point about the importance of health, sexual safety, and life education as part of the curriculum. Again, that is a very controversial statement, because as much as I myself think it's essential, there has been some strong positions, a strong stance against that being taught within the school system, some suggesting that it should only be applicable from certain forms within secondary school go up, and it should not even be within the primary school setting. At this particular stage where we are as a nation, we need to start teaching health and life education from as early as possible. But I also respect, people having the right to raise their children as they want to and as they should. But is Dr. Hossain back with us? All right, we're still trying to get through to Dr. Hossain. So let's take a quick break here on the program, and when we return, hopefully we'll have Dr. Hossain back on the line with us. If not, we'll just conclude this morning's proceedings. Stay tuned. What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
Balancing your career and work with your personal life is a struggle.
I thought it was a good example I was setting for my kids. So they would see hard work, perseverance, long hours pays off. But I never felt like I could have achieved enough. It was never enough.
A lot of people, because of those trauma and original sensitizing events and how we were brought up, we tend to put ourselves last. We tend to put other people first, work first, other people, and we tend to put ourselves last. And that is a recipe for disaster.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back. Dr. Gabriel Hussain is with us on the line once more. There's not much time left, but Dr. Hussain, thank you for joining us once more. If you'd like to continue from the last point, of which before we lost you.
Thanks, and apologies for the call dropping. I'm not sure if I made the point that I wanted your viewers to keep the idea of health and family life education.
Mm-hmm. That's the last point.
And to be able to call, because the HFLE curriculum is not being adequately taught, to call for GBV, gender-based violence prevention, to be taught in schools. And so I'm not sure if I was able to make that point, but I do want to make sure.
Yeah, that was actually the final points that you were touching on. But my final question, actually, before we conclude this discussion, is masculinity the standalone factor?
Sorry, is what?
Is masculinity a standalone factor?
Oh, great. That's a great question. No, it's not actually, but if we don't look at the issues of crime and violence without including an analysis of masculinity, we will be coming with such a partial perspective that we will not be effective. So, for example, if we are talking about crimes being committed by youth, but we don't differentiate between male and female youth, then we are misapprehending what is happening among youth who are perpetrators, who are victims, and what kinds of issues they are differently facing. So it is not a standalone factor, but as we discussed the kinds of proposals that have been made over decades that need implementation, that are proven to be effective, whether, as I said, it is teaching about GBV in schools, prison reform, perpetrator counseling programs, because, you know, perpetrators are not born bad people, and those programs have been proven to be effective in Guyana as well as in Grenada, for example. As we go through each of the kinds of solutions that really can make a difference in the medium to long term, and this is different from policing, I think that we have to include an analysis of masculinity. And anytime anyone is having a discussion about this with you and they are not bringing in an understanding of how our beliefs and values around manhood shape these issues, they are not going to be effective. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's not a standalone issue. Mm-hmm. And as we conclude, I want to say that, you know, we have to be careful of politicians sometimes, not be led by them, but be the ones to lead whom they must follow. You know, follow those who are doing the work on the ground, who, you know, have the experience, who have been making the change, and make them the ones that the politicians need to get their talking points from, and value ourselves as citizens doing excellent work to kind of keep our society together, and stay focused on the conversations that we should be having, not the ones that distract us from things that can actually make a change.
Dr. Gabriel Hussain, thank you very much for your time this morning.
It's been a pleasure.
Very good conversation, and hopefully we can expand later on. But for now, take care.
Thank you so much.
Keep well. Dr. Gabriel Hussain, Senior Lecturer at the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus. Don't blame women for men's crimes, but by extension, don't blame men for women's crimes. The conversation of masculinity and manhood, that is certainly one that needs to be discussed. Programs, the social programs, the outreach to get to those in need, but certainly masculinity is not the standalone factor. As we conclude this morning's edition of AM Prime, Thank you very much for joining me this morning, and I want to thank my directors who have, for the last 2 weeks, they've been excellent at their work and certainly have been doing a fantastic job. And my greatest sense of gratitude being expressed to them. Thank you to all our guests, and most importantly to you, the viewer. It's always a pleasure starting my day with you, and I hope that feeling is very much mutual. But to the Muslim community here in Trinidad and Tobago, Eid Mubarak to you, wishing you, as we break the holy month of Ramadan and celebrate Eid, all the greatest and richest blessings to you all. There has been some confusion as to exactly when Eid will be celebrated, but putting that aside, Eid Mubarak, greetings and blessings to the entire Muslim community. Trinidad and Tobago, there's always been some debate as to whether or not we're still sweet, but I love my country. If it's one thing, I love my country, and it is that love that keeps me going, that love that allows me to do what I do. So, here's to a great weekend ahead. Have a wonderful weekend, and I really hope, I can only hope, that it's a safe one, but I also hope that it's a productive one, because as much as we're resting, I hope that we are reflecting. So have a great weekend, keep safe, keep well, and no matter what you do, always be responsible, always be mature. And should things go good, we always hope that they do. I look forward to sharing a cup of coffee with you next week, Monday morning from 6 a.m. So stay tuned to the Content Capital for more programming throughout the day. But for now, bye-bye.